Welcome back. For weeks, the question was, would Ruby Red, Alabama elect a candidate accused of molesting teenage girls? It was a nail-biter, but the answer is no. Still, President Trump backed him, and Americans elected President Trump despite more than 13 women accusing him of improper sexual advances. While Harvey Weinstein, Kevin Spacey, Matt Lauer, Charlie Rose's careers came to sudden, inglorious ends, the same has not been true for many politicians. Yes, Al Franken is retiring, so is John Conyers. Now Texas Republican Blake Farenthold at the end of his term, mind you. But their demise has not been immediate or even certain. In fact, some Democrats and even some Republicans are openly questioning whether Al Franken should have resigned from the Senate. And joining us for more is Cheryl Wilson, chairwoman of the Manatee County Democratic Party, Lynn Larson of the Sarasota County Republican Party, and Kate Bradshaw, political reporter for Creative Loafing. Thank you all for being here tonight. So answer me this. As I set it up, you have so many people from media, from television, movies, journalism. As soon as these allegations have surfaced, they are out. But the process is so much slower when it comes to the world of the politics. And the question is why? Lynn?
All right, who wants to jump in on that one?
Or Cheryl?
I would think, Alan, there are probably a lot of different explanations for it, but the one that we tend to hear most often is that this is a voter decision, that it is up to voters to decide who represents them in Congress, and after that it is up to the body to do their investigations and to come up with some reputable and reliable reports and inferences and decisions, and it's been a touchy touchy area over the last several months.
Do you agree with that?
Not particularly. I believe very much that this is an issue whose time has arrived. It has certainly impacted politics as well as you say, many other industries, and I believe very much in the fact that we have to take the strong stand that the harassment and the sexual improprieties aimed at women in politics or in any field has to be believed and has to be addressed immediately.
Lynn, I have heard it observed that in cases where the man denies that he did it, there is less pressure on him to resign than people like Al Franken, who eventually say, look, my conduct was inappropriate and I'm taking responsibility for it.
I think it's a bigger problem than that. Number one, I don't think it's just a women's issue. I think it's a human rights issue, because I think everybody deserves to have a workplace that they can feel safe, they do not feel intimidated, whether they're male or female. They shouldn't have to work in any environment that's going to make them feel intimidated. So, but the problem is when you have someone alleging something from 30 years ago, and people's memories may change. Who knows? But things should be investigated. Things should be looked into, investigated before. And people are.
The obvious question is, should the allegations against President Trump be investigated?
Well, I think that those have been
yeah.
looked into, and I think they have, and as the public has spoken, the voters elected him.
The age-old, the 30-year and the 40-year-old claims are part of the issue as well, though. There are reasons that women did not feel comfortable in speaking up, and that's as much of as a big part of the issue as the harassment itself.
Kate, when it comes to, let's say, presidential approval in our area, does the issue of those allegations matter to people, or does it fall mostly on partisan lines?
Well, I would say both. I mean, just in talking to people and what I see on social media, I think a lot of people, in bringing up Roy Moore, also say, well, what about Donald Trump? But yeah, I mean, I would say a lot of those people are Democrats or moderate Republicans. So, I mean, the reality of it is, yes, this does often fall along party lines. And they do, a lot of the Republicans that want to defend Donald Trump and say those women are liars are also quick to point the finger at Hollywood. So it's interesting. It's a mixed bag.
All right. We are just getting warmed up, and we'll have much more on the week in Washington right after we check the First Alert weather. Stay with us. Welcome back. It looks like the Republicans have the votes for their tax reform bill. It was a given, according to a new poll from the Marist organization. More of those surveyed believe the tax plan will actually hurt their family finances. And joining us for more is Cheryl Wilson, the chairwoman of the Manatee County Democratic Party, Lynn Larson of the Sarasota County Republican Party, and Kate Bradshaw, political reporter of Creative Loafing. We're going to get to tax reform in a moment, but there were some late developments this afternoon when it was announced that the president's attorneys are going to be meeting with the special counsel about the Russia investigation. The president made some comments about the investigation and about the FBI this morning, and we want to take a quick look at that.
I have nothing to do with Russia. Everybody knows it. That was a Democrat hoax. It was an excuse for losing the election, and it should have never been this way, where they spent all these millions of dollars.
So, Lynn, every intelligence agency does believe that the Russians interfered with the U.S. presidential election. The president's former national security advisor pled guilty, is cooperating with the government now, and the president at that very moment also says that he doesn't want to talk about a pardon for Michael Flynn yet. We will see what happens. What would you say if the president basically, pardoned Michael Flynn?
Well, what did Michael Flynn plead guilty to? He pled guilty to lying to the FBI, not into colluding with the Russians to trying to get Trump elected. So that's what we need to remember of what he pled guilty to. And so he did not disclose a meeting. That does not mean that he worked with them or that the Russian people got, or the Russian, hierarchy got Trump elected.
You know how this works. You plead guilty to a lesser charge in exchange for information, and you have to proffer, you have to tell prosecutors what you have to offer.
I think you're assuming that, and you make some assumptions.
Well, a plea bargain means a bargain.
Well, but you're making some assumptions, and really, I think that you need to see when the facts come out as to what it is. And as far as giving him a pardon, we have also, there's a lot of precedents for that, and Hillary Clinton lost all those emails, and nothing was ever done to her.
But do you think a pardon of a cooperating witness in the criminal investigation on the president's campaign would short-circuit the investigation? Wouldn't that in itself be an obstruction of justice?
I don't think that it's an obstruction of justice, and I think that it's really, they have been investigating and trying to find something, and I would like to see us move on to something that actually might benefit something. And, I understand we don't want Russia interfering in an election. We don't want that to happen. Let's see what we can do to prevent that from happening in the future.
Well, let me ask you, and I know, Cheryl, you want to jump in there, but there was another story today that broke that the president has not had a single cabinet meeting on Russia interference and will not take part in meetings to plan to make sure that it does not happen again.
May I jump in? That's part of what I was thinking as I was listening to this. The story that struck me today was that the president gets angry when Russia is brought up in the briefings. And even the newscasters making those reports seem to just say that as a matter of fact. The president gets angry when Russia comes up. And I'm thinking, what does that mean? Does that stop the briefers from giving him the information? Does it change the information that they give the president? Does he cry? Does he jump up and down? Does he fire someone? What does he do?
Well,
does he push the nuclear button?
It's a bit different than that, since there is an ongoing investigation, and if he does meet and discuss it, whatever he says is going to be leaked, and it's going to become more a part of the investigation. So until this is settled, I can understand. Let it settle out before it.
But if you don't come up with a plan to prevent it from happening again because you're afraid to bring it up to the president, aren't you leaving the door open that it could happen again?
And the president needs the information.
Well, it's not just the president it's not just the president's job to come up with a plan. I'm sure it's staff and other people, Congress, etc. Where are they making a plan?
Okay. Kate, does this continue just to fall down partisan lines in terms of most Democrats see this and they get really angry, and then you have Republicans who say, move on, you lost, get over it?
Yeah, I would definitely say, like most things these days, it falls pretty strictly along party lines. And I mean, you have people like Pam Bondi and Matt Gaetz saying, look at all this corruption that's going on in the FBI. Bondi said it was worse than Watergate, the level of hijinks and corruption. And I mean, it's just interesting that they're kind of turning it into this, like, oh, the deep state doesn't like Trump and are conspiring to get rid of him. And I mean, that's just kind of this, yeah, long story short, party lines.
All right, Lynn, I mean, do you trust the FBI as a law enforcement organization?
I trust the FBI, but at the same time, the FBI came back with very conflicting information in the last end of the election. So
What do you mean?
Well, Hillary Clinton blamed the FBI for her losing the election.
I must have missed that.
Well, her supporters certainly, and I imagine it had an impact.
A few of us said maybe if you'd gone to Michigan or if you'd gone to
There are lots of different
swing states, you might have done better. A few of us said that.
Let's turn to the GOP tax reform bill. News tonight, it appears that all Republicans in the Senate are on board, including Bob Corker, the senator from Tennessee, who said that he was not going to vote for something that would add to the deficit, and also Marco Rubio, who held back for an increase in terms of the child tax credit. So, Lynn, let me start with you. Polls show that less than half of all Americans are in favor of this particular tax reform plan, but it does not seem that the Republicans in Congress are slowing down in any way. If anything, they want to deliver it by Christmas.
We haven't seen the final plan yet, and they've tried to incorporate things that, you know, that the different senators wanted, as in Marco Rubio giving him what he wanted. We do need tax reform, and we need it for businesses. Businesses employ people. The corporations, we're giving corporate a break, but corporations employ people, and that's where the jobs come from. We need to bring jobs back to this country to make the country the best industrial nation in the world. We're not that anymore.
Cheryl, you know, economic growth has been not flat, but has not been robust. Won't this create jobs and hopefully bring salaries up?
We can only look at the projections, and I have yet to see anything that projects that that's likely to happen as a result of this particular bill. We know that it's going to create budget deficits. We know that it's going to reduce buying power of the people that are purchasing the goods of the companies and the services. We're seeing as you say, a rush to get it through before the end of the year that flies in the face of analysis, of economic interpretation, and of what, as you said, what most of the citizens want.
Kate, as I mentioned, the polls show that this, at least among the public, this bill is not overwhelmingly popular. What sense do you get out there, because you cover the entire Tampa Bay area,
Right.
in terms of where people are falling?
Well, again with the party lines, but I mean, I definitely see a volume of people who think it's unfair, that it unfairly benefits the super rich. I mean, especially with the estate tax and large corporations, and that necessarily that level of savings on taxes doesn't. I mean, that's not really going to do much for. I think there's a lot of skepticism over whether that will lead to more hiring or higher wages. I mean, I think a lot of people need higher wages.
You know, Lynn, quickly, I saw a spot with Treasury Secretary Mnuchin asking corporate CEOs, will this result in higher salaries for your employees? And most of those CEOs said, no, we're going to return it in terms of dividends, not to the employees, not in terms of new jobs. Is that part of the problem?
Well, dividends go back to the people, and a lot of the people back here, you know, a lot of the people in your viewing area are living on those dividends, and a lot of the people who are retired depend on those dividends to, you know, to fill their grocery cart.
There are a lot of middle-class families over here who need higher salaries because they can't pay their bills.
I believe it was one of the pizza guys who said, no, we'll reinvest it, put it back into the dividends rather than putting it into the employees. And the people that consume those pizzas are the families that are making under $75,000 a year. And the projections are that, you know, it's kind of like the introductory rate on a credit card. You get the tax break for a couple of years, but in 10 years, those 75,000 and under people are going to be paying more in taxes.
But there's nothing to say those people are going to be
We're
paying
going to continue our conversation. Back with final thoughts when we return. Stay with us. And our guest joined us right now for final thoughts. There was one more thing I wanted to get tonight, and that was usually you do not see the hearings on TV for Senate appointees to the federal bench. The president is making a lot of appointees to open seats on the judiciary. And then this happened. Yesterday, questioning by a Republican senator from Louisiana to one of President Trump's picks for the federal bench.
Have you ever tried a jury trial?
I have not.
Civil?
No.
Criminal?
No.
Bench?
No.
State or federal court?
I have not.
Do you know what a motion in limine is?
I would probably not be able to give you a good definition.
Do you know what the Younger abstention doctrine is?
I've heard of it, but again,
How about the Pullman abstention doctrine?
I heard.
You'll all see that a lot in federal court. Okay.
Great TV, Kate, but does anybody care?
I think a lot of people do. I saw it shared multiple times on social media today. I mean, I think it's gone viral. Yeah, I mean, I think people care that the president is appointing people that have no frame of reference and no experience, or little to no experience that's pertinent to the position.
Lynn, again, that was a Republican senator doing the questioning
Yes.
there. How can you rationalize someone who has so little information about basic 101 things in terms of the legal system becoming a federal judge?
The only thing I could tell you is he probably did a wonderful job as an administrator, and perhaps maybe he needs to stay an administrator. But he probably did a very wonderful job as an administrator, and he had not been a trial person, and I'm sure there's very, very many people that would be very well qualified that could be replaced, and I expect that he probably will step down
Cheryl,
and withdraw.
The president has the right to appoint or to nominate whoever he wants to.
He does, but we have expectations of the president as well, and that's that he nominate people who are qualified and competent and capable to do the job that he's appointing him to. That was painful to watch from many aspects. It was painful for the nominee, I'm sure, to sit there, but it was probably more painful for the American people realizing that these are the types of appointments we're getting.
And these are lifetime jobs. So, ladies, thank you very much for joining us.